action. I can't get no call to action, but I try, and I try, and I try.
Hello and welcome to Call to Action, the go-to podcast for anyone trying to make sense of the world of marketing, business and beyond. In an industry that is a minefield of utter bollocks, we aim to capture our heroes and allies from the front line to have a chinwag with. It's like Pokemon Go, with the single but vital exception that it's not a short-term bandwagon of shite. It's brought to you by Gasp, and I'm Giles Edwards. Today, I've caught Andrew Jolliffe. For 25 years, he's written ads, strategies, thought starters, content manifestos, and copy. Some of those have won him prizes in Cannes, Paris, and New York, but more importantly, he still adores writing them. In an age where concepts cast shadows over it, Andrew is a true advocate of craft. Rory Sutherland says he's as charming, incisive, and intelligent as the work he produces, two things not always found in combination. And when a copywriter of the calibre of George Tannenbaum says things like, "I sure as hell don't want to compete against Andrew," that speaks volumes. Andrew says consumers aren't thick. They need fun, entertaining, intelligent reasons to act or change their ways, let alone buy anything. We must be craftspeople again. Craft is about caring, about treating consumers as intelligent beings, not numbers or plankton. An amoeba can tell you that sloppy work says a brand doesn't give a fuck. Craft is an investment. It shows the world you're going to be about for a long time. Welcome to the show, Andrew.
Hello, and thank you very much for having me.
7 quickfires, Andrew. Stick or twist?
Oh, goodness. Twist, because I like martinis and I like a twist of lemon.
Well, sticking with that theme, wine, French or Italian?
Oh, mate, it depends where I am, really. If I'm in France, I'll drink French. If Italian, I will not touch French. I will drink Italian. I'm very loyal to the countries I live in.
Good man. Right, pipe organ builder or firework technician?
Goodness, I've been both, so both been fun. I shall expand on those two later. But they've both been a lot of fun. They've both been useful. If I have to ever go back to a career, if I want to sort of finish my working life as a way on the way I started, that I'll be a pipe organ builder again. But that might not happen.
Similar theme: beekeeping or glass blowing?
Oh, goodness. I want to go back to beekeeping again one day. So beekeeping, please.
Lovely. Number 5, Will Audrey or Patrick Collister?
Oh, my God. There's a curveball. They've both been very instrumental in my career. I love them both very dearly, and they've both enormously helpful. I probably have more lunches with Will Audrey and more chat with Patrick Collister. So sometimes I see Will Audrey more through an alcoholic haze than I do Patrick Collister. Make your mind up on that one.
Right, number 6, Cannes Lion or BAFTA?
BAFTA by a long way, really. Cannes Lions, I think probably one or two people have probably told you by now. I think awards themselves as a whole are losing their value because there are too many of them, and the sort of criteria for winning them is changing too much. So a BAFTA, yes. I mean, still, you have to work hard to be a BAFTA. I'm very lucky. I have one, which is quite interesting. Yes.
Yeah. Well said.
But it holds more value with me than advertising awards these days. There are too many.
Yeah. I don't blame you whatsoever. Right. Finally, there's some brilliant quotes about you from other people on your website. So I'm going to put two to you and ask which your favourite is. There are few people who can see the world so differently, or Andrew never gets it right, and that is precisely what we appreciate about him.
The second one by a long way, really.
Yes.
Because I think the way to succeed in life, if you're in a business like ours, is to be free to fuck up. And you got to give who you write. If you're writing for a client or you're writing for an agency or writing for anyone, really, you've got to be prepared to give what's in your head rather than what you think they're going to expect. And if people have to understand that, really. People don't expect perfection first time. People want to see what you think, and then you refine later. So yes, indeed. Second one by a long way.
Amazing. Well, listen, That was brilliant. I was rather hoping you would choose that one, and maybe we'll expand on that as we record.
Absolutely, by all means, absolutely, yes, exactly, yes.
Yeah,
I think
so
I love it as a quote as well. It's fantastic. Yes.
Yeah, we've got one on our site which is "Gasp is too revolutionary for the Church of England," and that was given to us by the Church of England. So we're very happy with
very,
it.
very good, excellent. I love it. Yes, exactly.
So regular listeners to the show, there are literally hundreds of thousands of them listening, will be familiar that we always like to ask our guests how their career started and how they ended up where they are now. What listeners won't know is that I have a significant amount of research just answering that question on you. And I feel like I could ask you this question and just sit back for the entire hour-long-ish episode we're going to record. So can you just talk to us a little bit about your early life and your early kind of career?
Yes, of course. Yes, I'll keep it short if I can.
Sure.
The advertising is my third career, but by far the longest. I've been in advertising now, actually, over 30 years. The first, I left school at 16, and I thought I really knew what I wanted to be. I left school, but of course, and I wasn't very good at it. So I was terrible at school. But when I was 14, I built a pipe organ in my bedroom because I thought it would just be fun to do. Okay, so so when I was 16. I got myself an apprenticeship in London with a firm of organ builders, and they'd just finished the organ at St Paul's Cathedral, which is one of the biggest organs in England, and they had lots and lots of work, and literally took us everywhere, and I did 7 years with them as an apprentice and then as an organ builder. I specialised in tuning them and maintaining them, and also making the pipes as well. But also it taught me an awful lot about also the people, the extraordinary people you met. Remember, this was the 70s. It wasn't today. It wasn't very. There was nothing PC about 70s England. People said what they thought. The air was blue with four-letter words. My initiation ceremony when I first got there as an apprentice was having a litre of hot glue poured down my pants, and the foreman had the biggest porn stash I've ever seen in my life. And everything else. It was a collection of Cockney characters because it was in the east end of London in Bethnal Green, and it taught me more. It taught me as much about sort of how people work and how people tick and stuff than how to handle a plane or solder a bit of metal. It was full of the most bizarre characters. There was a guy there who looked as if he was made out of plastic, but in fact he wasn't. And he was one of the brightest guys I've ever met. There was a guy who'd done time inside. There was a guy who sort of walked for 30 miles to work, and there was a lot of people doing a lot of things that would never do now, and people said what they liked. I was called, I wasn't called Andrew, I was called Longshanks for the Great Streak of Piss. And this was about when I was 16, and it was and that sort of atmosphere was really formative. You said. Anyway, I graduated from being an apprentice and sweeping the floor and making the tea to being on the bench, and then went and made metal pipes and that sort of thing. But also we had one of our jobs about 3 years in was getting the organ ready for the organ in St Paul's ready for Charles and Di's wedding. And I worked in the cathedral for a whole week of nights. Because the organ has about 10,000 pipes. So
wow.
So we were me and a mate were just there all night, for 5 days, doing all that. Poor old Di. I really feel for her even now. Really, yeah. And of course, organ building used to take you away a lot as well. It used to take you to all sorts of weird places. Instead of some weird B&Bs, weird B&Bs around up and down the country. B&Bs where I had to roll myself into a cylinder to get through the door of my bedroom. All sorts of stuff like that. There was one place we stayed. I think it was in Chichester. We worked at the cathedral. There was a knock on the door at 2 a.m, and the daughter of the proprietor of the hotel, got there and tried to seduce me. I was bloody nearly succeeded. All sorts of stuff like that. And it also told you about all about people and the way people behave, that sort of stuff as well. And that sort of stuck in me, all that time. It was a real life, really. And also, I lived in this, I had no money at all. because organ builders never earn any money either. The whole thing was, I was living on a shoestring really. Sometimes I used to, scrabble around under the bed for loose change to buy myself a loaf of bread at the end of the week. Yeah, but that tells you an awful lot as well. Yeah. And then I'm sort of a few years in, I came here to Italy for a year and did some work experience with the people here. And this is actually the same village where I'm actually living now. And then I came back and I got a bit disillusioned with organ building because, again, the pay was terrible and everything else. I loved it, but at the same time, it was a bit sort of, I thought there might be some other things in the world I wanted to discover, really. So I left, and a neighbour of mine I lived at the Angel in Islington at the time, was a firework operator, and he sort of put on displays. He was sort of slowly sort of guy, a very nice guy, Ben Gaskell. He's a nice guy. He's a bit of a Sloan, and he knew lots of Sloaney people, and he'd started this firework company. And I knew he was a firework man because there were sorts of mortars and sort of rocket stands and things on his doorstep at the Angel Islington. So I just knocked on his door one day and said, "Are you a firework operator? And the next day you do, can I come along and see what you do?" He said, "Yes, sure, Andrew, yes, of course. So I went along, and the first show we did was the Marchioness of Chumley at a great big stately home in Norfolk. And we did that, and then we did the opening of the Design Museum in London for Terence Conran, who was a friend of his as well.
Wow.
And a lot of really interesting things. The opening of the appeal to save the Albert Memorial. We did enormous letters, "Save Albert," across the width of pretty much across the width of Hyde Park in Fireworks. And then he decided he wanted to do something else. He was also an expert on Madagascar. So he wanted to trade in rock crystal and things from Madagascar. So he did that, and he sold me the company for almost nothing. I bought the kit and the contact list and everything. I invested in a bit of technology, did a bit of marketing and stuff. I didn't have any money still. I had nothing left at all after my organ building experience. And went from there, and it sort of worked really. The first big thing I landed was I was appointed one of the design team on the fireworks at Disneyland Paris. I just wrote to them and said, "You need a firework person now rather than in 2 years' time." And they said, "Yes, well, we're actually putting a team together right now. So consider yourself appointed." So I was put to work with two French firework people who I now know very well as friends. Pierre-Alain Hubert, who used to travel the world doing this sort of stuff, and Daniel Azencourt, who used to do he did just before, a few years before, all the big shows for Jean-Michel Jarre. And he's in his workshop in just outside Paris. There was all the old Jarre special effects stuff, even the giant mirror balls, the 3-meter wide mirror balls. These are all there. And I had meetings with him, and I worked with him when we'd done the opening at Disneyland Paris. I worked with him on a few other things, including a show in the Caribbean and stuff, which is very interesting too. That attracted a lot of publicity, and I didn't have to advertise it at all. The thing about doing something like that is the press do all your work for you.
Right.
You don't have to tell anybody. You don't have to take out ads saying, "We've done this show and we look at us now," and everything else. I didn't have to do anything. All the newspapers like the Evening Standard and the Times and everything did all the work for us. They just wanted it because it was something unusual and not interesting. It generated lots of articles, and we went from there. And so we landed things like, we did shows for Microsoft, the 10th anniversary of Microsoft, stuff for British Child, the opening of West Country Television, where we had to fire some stuff in the middle of the sea, and we got the tide tables wrong. We up to our balls in seawater. The opening Canary Wharf we did. We worked in Nigeria, the Caribbean, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and add a lot of other stuff in the sort of regular stuff in the UK, like sort of a lot of slowly weddings and things, which was quite a lot of fun. And we even did things like we even did a divorce party, which was quite fun. A guy,
really fantastic,
like a hospital operator, and decided to invest £500,000 in a party to celebrate his divorce.
Wow. Did he invite his ex?
Oh, the ex was there. Yes, he was. Yes. That was absolutely incredible. Yeah. And so, I remember the ex came afterwards and after the show, kissed me on the lips. Of course, now being a free woman, she could do what she wanted. And anyway, that was an enormous thing. There was a sort of, in the 80s, there was a sort of air of astonishing optimism, really. Everyone thought they could do whatever they wanted because there was a sort of great road to prosperity ahead for everybody, really. And the money people spent and the sort of optimism of the whole era was extraordinary. I don't think the world will ever go back to that at all. I think that it was something in the era that's very special, really. And it's something that Maggie Thatcher gave us, and we can both thank her for and blame her for too, probably as well. She convinced the man on the street that he too could be a sort of capitalist. Yeah. And if you could do that, you could do anything, really. Anyway.
But I have heard you also say, if you think advertising is cutthroat, try Fireworks people.
You should try Fireworks, indeed. Yeah, the Fireworks people, other Firework people were out to get you, really. Particularly when there was so much work, and also towards the end when there was a recession, in sort of 1991. People were very cutthroat, and even the people who you used to buy Fireworks from, all the suppliers who bought the stuff through China and Japan and all sort of thing, and sold it to people like me. Even though you spent sort of 150, 200 grand a year with them, they started stabbing you in the back. It was extraordinary. Yeah, they used to publish articles and send your client letters saying that don't use this guy again. He knows little about the automobile, the fireworks business. Don't touch him with a barge pole. And this was a guy who used to take your money. Really, so it was extraordinary, really. And whenever you used to meet other firework people at trade fairs or something like that, you always used to sit there with your arms folded as if you were sort of on guard against each other. Really, extraordinary. Much more cutthroat and also much more sort of catty, a bit bitchy, really.
Right.
Much more than advertising people.
So how, this strikes me as, I've learned a couple of things from this, and it does kind of is reinforced by the research we've done. So number one, I can tell you were a very sought after man. Must have been quite an attractive fella.
Yes.
Back then. There seems to be stories revolving around.
Yes, I don't know what I am now. Yes.
I didn't mean to suggest otherwise. But also, I wonder. Like it sounds quite frantic. I wonder how that compared to your early life ahead of going on this whirlwind from the age of 16 as an apprentice. Is this the type of life you led and you was inevitable, or did you just almost catch a wave at the age of 16?
Not at all. I very much caught a wave because I had a very sort of subdued childhood, really.
Right.
I had a father who's very, very bright guy. He's still alive, so I can't say anything horrible about him at all. But I do love him dearly. But he sort of convinced me a little bit that I wasn't fit for very much, really. I felt slightly sort of repressed in a way as a kid. I didn't say very much. I was very quiet.
He thought you'd make a good window cleaner, I've read.
He said I thought I'd make a good window cleaner. Exactly. And that was sort of, I thank him for that in a way, because he was sort of, that was the incentive for doing probably one of the incentives for doing so much, as much as I've done.
Yes.
To sort of try, not to prove him wrong as a person, because, I think he was very intelligent in saying that, really, in a way, because I think he probably knew I'd react to it. Yeah. And he was, he's a very nice, we get on much better now. We didn't then, I couldn't wait to go to work. I left home at 3 days after my 16th birthday. I couldn't wait to get away because I just knew that there was this other world waiting for me, and I was sort of told that I'm sort of by nature I'm actually quite quiet and reserved and very polite and not very forthcoming in a funny sort of way. And that was me as a kid, really. And then all of a sudden I left home and I'm just opened up.
And you say advertising was your third career, so I feel like we've touched on two. How did the third career start?
Well, when the Firework company came to an end quite suddenly, because we did a show at Eton College. We had an accident. A stray shell caught a gust of wind at the top somewhere and came down in the crowd. And in fact, I burnt the two supermodels in the audience got burnt, and it left a very bitter taste in my mouth. We were fully insured and we were fully compliant with everything. It's one of the reasons why we used to spend $35,000 a year on insurance in the 80s. Wow. That's a lot of money. But it just left a bitter taste in my mouth, and it sort of stayed with me for such a long time that I had to get out of it, really. So I sold up, really. And I thought, what am I going to do now? I didn't know anybody in advertising. I didn't know anything about it at all. Nothing at all, but it just sounded fun. I've seen a couple of copies of campaign on some Firework class desks. I thought, well, what is this game about? I knew nothing about it at all. It might be people in big glasses and suits, or it might be, in those days it was, or lots of creative people who wore black, or people who drank lots of martinis. I have no idea. Oh, this was actually pre-Mad Men or anything. So I didn't know anything about it at all. So what I did was, this was before the internet, of course, and before everything. So I wrote and hand-wrote 50 letters to 50 creative directors in London. Wrote them by hand and sent them off, and I got 3 replies back. One from Axel Childecott, who I haven't been in touch with for an awful long time, and he thought I was absolutely barking mad. But this is how you do it. He said, go and buy yourselves a layout pad and some markers and do some ads. This is called your book. Now then you take it around. The second person was Chris O'Shea, who helped me an awful lot in the early days. And I couldn't wish for a nicer guy to help me. The third one was Patrick Collister at Ogilvy. And he sent me a copy test. And he was one of the last creative directors probably in London, probably in the world, I don't know, to use a copy test as a sort of gauge of people before they joined. And I did a copy test. I also did a very bad portfolio as well. It's terrible, terrible work, which I've got some of the ads still in my drawer somewhere here. And wouldn't show them to anybody. Even an example of how not to do it. And he gave me a shot. He was. I told him. I said, I want you to be as brutal as you want to be. I don't want you to be nice and polite or things. Just if it's shit, say so and tell me how to improve, because that's the only way I'm going to learn. And so he gave me a shot for a fortnight, and in that fortnight, I was lucky to meet some other people at Ogilvy. There was a guy from Nick Parton who had just finished doing. This takes it back a bit. He had finished doing the Don't Rough It, Live Life in Comfort campaign, which was taking the world by storm, and he won him lots of awards. Another thing, he said, come and sit with me, be my writer for a bit, and let's see how it goes. And we worked on lots of things. We worked on Huggies and all sorts of stuff like that. And I, bit by bit, I just learned by osmosis, really. And just every day I picked people's brains. And I said to everyone, just say what you think of what I'm doing. Don't try and be all nice. I can take it. I've done 2 careers as well where people have been horrible sometimes. So to be horrible if you want. Don't mince your words, really. Okay. Those 2 weeks then turned into 2 months, then turned into how many years? 5 years.
I was going to say, I mean, I'm a huge believer in, and I know you are too, that good people know a lot of stuff about stuff, and that happens from other careers and your experience ahead of joining the advertising industry.
Yes.
But the other angle I hadn't really considered is just not only was it really nice for Patrick to give you that 2 weeks, but relative to someone pouring a pint of glue down your pants, he must have been an angelic.
Well, it was angelic, but the thing is, everyone. People were very nice, but very tough as well,
Okay.
And, I went to, I remember going to one person's office in Ogilvy, and some people, was probably pissed as well. I don't know. He just took all the work out of my portfolio, scrumbled it up, and put it in the bin. I said, start again. And instead of, I think if you did that to somebody these days, if a young person these days, they'd be offended and take you to HR.
Yes.
In those days, and, having done an apprenticeship with a bunch of old bastards and in a workshop, it was second nature to me. I didn't mind that at all. It was like starting again at another apprenticeship.
Yeah. And was it quite evident to you, at least, that you had an advantage of understanding people from all walks of life?
I think so, very, very much. Very, very much indeed. I think having done the two things I did before put me on a very good stead, really, for many reasons, really. First of all, you learn how people tick. The second thing is I think I've always believed that only real experiences turn into great ideas, really. And this is the sort of slight grungy thing I have about the internet. Although we use it every day, and it's a fantastic reference library and everything else, but it's a bit like a vending machine. It gives you what you ask for. And you don't stumble on things by accident. And you don't stumble on experiences by accident and turn into things. The things that surprise you in life, the things you actually encounter just by accident, and the things that stay in your head, and the staying things will actually eventually become a thought and maybe an idea. Okay? And I think we've robbed ourselves a little bit of that by overusing one resource, and that's the internet. Okay? I think that you said something that to me when you briefed me on this. There's a huge value in people understanding that talented people don't always step out of shiny college, uni, straight into a shiny career. Absolutely right. You shouldn't even try doing that, really. I think social media and the media itself, pressures people into sort of needing to do things the right way from the very start, and the fact there's no room for error, there's no room for mistakes, you always read stories about this guy who was a millionaire at 13, or, I landed my first record deal when I was still at school. Aren't that great? And everybody sees that as a benchmark and will try and emulate that and try and be perfect and try not to screw up from the very early times. It's not right at all, really. I think you learn by your screw-ups. I think you learn more by your mistakes and what you get wrong than if you just follow a set of rules, really. I can't see the point, really. With social media, it's very easy to follow that because, it's a funnel. It drags you in. We now have a whole lot of young people who are just trying to emulate each other rather than emulate what's around them, I think. And it's an enormous difference, and something that actually worries me a little bit too, sometimes, occasionally too.
If I may, I'd like to go back to your quote just now that the internet is like a vending machine. And I almost wish that I had a conversation earlier today with someone who runs a research company. And I wish I had the conversation with her after we'd had this conversation, because I think I was trying to articulate something about discovery,
yes,
about people in the advertising context. You can only really get when you spend time with those people rather than you ask specific questions in a survey. Because for the same reason, you can't discover anything because you're writing the question. So you're...
No, I think the internet has enlightened our lives in many, many ways, and it's great. And we all use it, and I love it every day. But it's robbed us a little bit of the joy of the real, tangible joy of discovery.
Yes,
I think.
Yeah, discovery is the word. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you tend to also. I think you only tend to retain knowledge. You retain things you see if you make an effort to learn them in the first place. So it sounds really old-fashioned. This sounds really old-farty to say, but I mean, whenever you wanted to know something, you used to go to a library. The very efforts of going to the library, and finding the department and asking the girl at the desk and finding the things you wanted, okay, was the incentive to actually go and learn what you were there to look up. Okay?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what they call the IKEA effect these days.
That's right, the IKEA effect. That's right, exactly. That's exactly what it is. And I think it sounds really fuddy-duddy, I know, and I don't mean this at all. It almost sounds as if it's almost too easy to access things. And if you make things too easy to access, they become passive. And you don't take them in at all.
Yeah. It's a really good point.
Yeah. And it's a really interesting thing. Yeah, it's a really thing. I mean, somebody said to me the other day, here, in fact, in garbled Italian, that to say, how come we've got we can access everything, every bit of knowledge there is in the world or something, yet we seem to know even a bit less than we did.
Yeah.
It's true, because we don't really have to work things out anymore.
Well, I think that works like from the other way you look at it. Perhaps if we're I'm trying to, in a very clumsy way, it would seem, get onto the subject of craft, because my quote I used about you talking about craft was about signalling and how if someone spent time on it, it means something to you.
Yes.
Rather than if you spend time trying to acquire information, it tends to stick more. But it works both angles, doesn't it?
It works both ways, exactly. It works both with craft is things, because, despite what a lot of people think, the consumer, David Ogilvy was right. The consumer is not an idiot. She's all right. And something I actually still believe in now, really. Consumers should be treated, as intelligent human beings. They should be challenged. Should be challenged at every opportunity, and they rise to it. And any consumer can tell the difference between a crafted ad and one that's been generated by somebody hitting a key. All consumers are literate. They can spell. They can appreciate the beauty of something incredibly visual or well written. And that, if they didn't do that, we wouldn't have art galleries or books. People, it's the fact that people read books or newspapers are a sign that people are literate, and appreciate writing. So to assume that they don't, and assume that they need to be spelt, have everything spelt out in front of them in the most inane, sort of watered down pap version possible, is actually not giving, it's not doing us any favors, really. The old adage was that you should always let the consumer complete the circle whenever you whenever you communicate with them, and you should always credit them with that, because it's not we're not us and them. We're more and more as an industry talking to ourselves rather than the people we work for. Communication is done with care. Say a brand takes care, and it doesn't matter whether it's a tin of baked beans or a dental service or a high street surgeon. It doesn't matter at all. People can recognize the fact that you've taken care over something and you've crafted something. You can apply the same thing to print and traditional media versus digital as well. If people know, consumers know that it's easier to generate a digital ad. People know that.
I saw a great retort a few weeks ago, which I have subsequently shared online, from someone talking about people who use Chat GDT or any other AI tool to write their copy.
Yeah.
And it was, why should I bother to read something that nobody was bothered to write?
Yeah, what a lovely phrase. Yeah, well, I think if you don't mind, I'm going to steal that somewhere.
Do it. Steal it. It's wonderful. But for the same reason. And do you think that your time as an apprentice, and I don't know whether organ builders regard themselves as craftsmen, obviously there's craft of sorts to a very high level. Do you think that's something that you arrived with when you started in advertising?
I think
did you see that get eroded?
So, yes, I think I very much understood the sort of the importance of taking care, really, because if you make an organ, you want it to last for 200 years. And so what we do in advertising, you make something which is going to last in people's minds. It doesn't last physically, because if you do run a print ad, it's going to be wrapping somebody's fish and chips next week. Fine, okay. Physically, it doesn't exist. It won't exist after that. But it will, if you aim for it to last longer in people's minds, enough for people to mention it over a conversation in a pub, or whistle a jingle in a bus queue, or people, or to bring it up in conversation when you're a little bit pissed over Sunday lunch. So do you remember that ad from last week? Oh, that was really funny. Christ, it went like this, and people thought, if you give people the material to remember, then of course they'll remember it easy.
Yeah, and when you talk about craft, you don't. Am I right in thinking you don't necessarily just mean the final execution of the idea? You mean the whole process?
Whole process, yeah, down to the last. I'm a writer. Down to the last. But I'm maybe a little bit obsessive about it. I don't have no idea at all. Ask someone like Steve Harrison or Will Audrey, and they'll probably tell you how, and it's I tend to be, yes, I punctuate, but even things like punctuation and little thing like that. But I do the same when I write. I'm terrible, really. I do the same when I write texts, and do email. I can't send a really terrible email to somebody which is badly crafted, because at the end of the day, if I write to a client to say something, and it's badly written, it's a bit of my writing. That's exactly it's. And if I text the client saying they're going to be late for a meeting or something like that, then I have to craft it because it's another bit of writing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you find that we have to, the clients, I suppose unfairly for those of us who believe in craft, do you find that it's unfair how weighted it is, in as much as we almost need to convince people that it's justifiable?
Yes, they do really. And I think a lot of it, part of our remit as advertising people, I think we should educate clients as well as everybody else. Because it's them that buy what we write, to begin with, really. And if they had a better understanding of of its importance, and it's very easy to thing to bring over. If I can convince somebody that to care is to show you care, then it's easy to impart on other people. So I think we should run a few little courses or evolve our clients sort of to a slightly deeper level, really. In the sense, we don't just sell them stuff; we tell them why we're doing it, and if we need to refer to it or take them somewhere where the creative inspiration comes from, or show them examples of better writing. I occasionally send my clients books. If I enjoy a novel, I'll send one to someone I'm writing for. Because this is how we were talking about strong sentences the other day, and here's a bit of him. Okay, this just reminded me of something by Ian McEwan. Yeah, I thought you'd like a copy. There's a lot of sort of shoveling going on. A lot of stuff that gets written that's shoveled on without any explanations and that sort of thing. And that reminds me of a little bit something that Steve Harrison said to me. Always try and present or sell by face to face rather than just sticking it on an email and sending it to somebody, because then you've got this understanding, you have this chemistry between you that allows you to explain to each other why you're doing what you're doing. Right? Anyway, I'm sounding a bit like an account man now. That's terrible. Let's get something more creative.
I can ask you to unpack that and send a few account people. But
please don't.
Did you work with Steve?
I did. Yeah, I worked for him briefly when he had the office in Greek Street, when it was Harrison Travel Wonderman.
Right. Okay.
He's a real inspiration. I love him to bits, really. Steve, I think if Steve would agree with me that he's an acquired taste and things. I love his work. I mean, I love some of the direct mail he's done. It's absolutely lovely, because it's so no nonsense and not superfluous and to the point and on ball all the time. That lovely work you probably remember he did for the AA about 20 years ago, which was there's lovely cardboard signs he used to hang up, used to hold by the roadside when your car broke down. You just send a whole load of those to people as a piece of direct mail and say, if you don't have AA, you're going to use it, you're going to need this. What a useful bit of thought. It's a really
genius.
It's a very sort of linear piece of thinking without any flaws in it, really. Which ends up in a surprise, which is lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm a big fan of Steve. I actually talk to Steve quite regularly, and I've been fortunate enough that he's been on the show a couple of times and even interviewed me on this, which is great. But I think he would 100% agree that he's an acquired taste, and I feel that's always been part of Steve. But that's great. I wasn't aware.
No, but he's very much a person who I've very much had a lot of time for. Really, indeed.
So where did advertising take you? Because you're still obviously practicing. You're still writing. You're still
very much so. Yes, indeed. Very much so. Yeah. So it took me from Ogilvy. I did about 2.5 years, I think, in a BBH with Will Audrey. That's how I met Will Audrey. And then I think BBH got fed up with me because I don't know really. I wasn't trendy enough. I can't remember what the reason was. But anyway, I left there and freelanced for a little bit, and I had my own agency for a little bit for 2 or 3 years. Well, just called Andrew Jolliffe, and we specialised in British food. And our first client was the National Farmers Union, and we did all that work to promote the red tractor and that sort of thing, which is all quite fun. But it was hard work. I'm a better creator than I'm a businessman by a long way, really. And the business side of it really got to me. I I couldn't do it very well, to be honest. I didn't know anything about building the right teams or anything as well. So it didn't sort of go belly up or anything. I just decided to give it a rest because it was what I realized very quickly was my big passion was writing rather than making sure we had enough turnover to pay everybody or anything.
Yeah.
So I sort of, but it was a lot of fun. We got some. The work we did for the NFU was quite a lot of fun. To promote the Red Tractor, we even designed did things like design the press conferences and that sort of thing. We had all the journalists wait through a field of wheat once. I remember to get to the podiums and things. It was a lot of fun. Yeah. So we put a bit of theatre in every single thing we did. We also worked for an ice cream brand and a kitchen brand and a few other things, which is a lot of fun. It was very small. I sort of got I went back to Ogilvy for 18 months as a group head on American Express, which was astonishingly stressful. Because Amex is a bastard brand really to work with. Really, it's really really tricky because it's an very interesting brand, but it's very hard. Because some bits of it are so definable, I think. And then I left, and my first wife and I, then we just bought a little apartment in Paris. We went over to see, and I thought, just out of curiosity, I thought I'll just see what the advertising scene is in Paris, and because I didn't know anything about it, and I went to the Ogilvy office just out of chance. And I bumped into a lady called Susan Westrup, who's now retired, who ran IBM from Paris, the whole of Europe, for the whole of Europe. And I met her. We just got on like a house on fire. She said, "Well, Susan, why do you come and work here?" So I did. My original sort of few weeks in Paris turned into 13 years.
Wow.
Yeah. I did 10 years at Ogilvy Paris, became head of copy. We did nearly all my creative awards I won in Paris. Because it was a bit like stepping back in time because London, by the time I left London, it all became a little bit, it was becoming a little bit online and a little bit more starchy and a little bit more constricted. Going to Paris, Ogilvy Paris was a bit like Ogilvy London probably was in the 70s. So it was going back to the old school really, a little bit, and still full of old agency politics and that sort of thing, but also very, very French as well.
What interests me specifically about that and what you've said with a nod to Ogilvy, and it's an answer you have given, and I should do you credit. It's not an absolute answer. You gave 3 answers to this question when you described your dream client.
Yes.
But one of them you said is the most obscure, tiny, hidden, unintelligible, squinky little brand with a world-saving product they'll let me do anything to sell. Now, I similarly have a maybe unhealthy obsession with those types of brands, and they're my dream client also. But I wonder how many of those would ever approach Ogilvy rather than go to a smaller independent.
None whatsoever, because they know they can't afford them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had an idea. I put an idea once to be when I was at BBH. I remember when we were at BBH, we all were asked to think of ideas to where we could take the business afterwards, and people suggested, let's start a record label and let's open a theatre and that, which is all very nice as well, because I had this idea as well for doing live ads in theatres as well. In fact, started a partnership with Eardrum to do that, but it never went anywhere for some reason. I don't know why. I'll try it again one day. But the thing I suggested was we launched Baby BBH using the same skills and the same skill sets and the same methods and the same ways of doing things as the big BBH, but only on a tiny scale for people who want to be big BBH clients in the future. And it went down like a cup of cold stick for some reason. I have no idea why. I think it was probably the wrong time, because I think if you suggested it now, I think it might fly. I think circumstances have changed, and the attitude towards brand growth and all the other stuff that people talk about is all different. So I think, and also with the sort of job market as it is, I think if you gave creatives a chance to work on small things as well. Everybody, but the thing is, here's the thing: everybody wants to work on Nike and Levi's and Coke. The people who really do the work. I think I did a blog on this once a couple of years ago, about the people who are the real heroes of this business are the growers rather than the sort of perpetuators. Really, the people who grow stuff from nothing. I love the challenge too of taking a brand with, who's nobody at all, at the moment, and with also probably not the resources to employ anyone big at all, and see where they go. Because what they can do is put themselves in your hands completely and say, take me somewhere exciting. Okay.
Time, weather, and we interrupt this podcast to announce that we will never interrupt this podcast with ads. Ads that awkwardly nudge you to contact the pod's host, Giles Edwards. Only last week, some pod listening companies did just that, calling for guidance on proper marketing. But we're not asking you to do that. Nope. Anyway, back to the show.
So asking the general public for their opinion, be it on Brexit or boat names, is notoriously fraught with danger. But we have asked, we've got one here from a chap who I believe you know well, Theo Erasmus.
Oh, yes.
Theo asks, is there a better way to prepare for this crazy business?
Yes, I think that steers me straight back to where we started. I think is that do even more before you do it, before you go in. Don't just go from university and learn about advertising and then get a job. Do something else first. It's a bit like being in government, really. I think all MPs in England should do at least one thing before they become MPs. It's the same thing, really. Do anything you want, even just for a short time. Before you try to get your first placement or first job in advertising, go and be a bricklayer for 6 months. Go and dig graves. Go and work in a hospital. Go and do something else. Work in a kitchen. Help a chef. Do anything else. Do anything you like. Do something else. That will be your best. That will be your best education. That will be your best preparation for what's to come.
Yeah, it would certainly help avoid the sort of cookie cutter
model
we seem to have. Yeah, I like. It's funny actually, and I might be going off topic slightly here, but my brother and I went to university, but he took a year out before going to university and had a proper job, and he was washing dishes and all sorts, anything he could do to earn a living.
Yeah.
And I always noticed during our time at university, albeit in different cities, that he seemed to have a greater respect for the work that would follow with graduation. Whereas to me, I still was, entirely ignorant to the real world at that stage. Admittedly, I had student jobs and so on, but yeah, I think just having that exposure and having that front line in whatever war you're fighting or career you're in is vital.
Very much so. I wrote a couple of years ago, a few years ago now. I used to coach quite a lot of people from the Miami Ad School. I wrote a presentation for them for budding writers, and it was just basically a sort of how-to, really. And the last thing is just a little chapter saying do. It's just a list of stuff. I'll give you 10, just so I know we're short of time. Okay, it just says chapter 9, do, like go to the opera, warn Niagara Falls, meet the Queen, work in a soup kitchen, go and see some metal patients, get crush a royal garden party, date a nuclear physicist, shag an actor or actress or actress's mistress, go on to hear music you think you'll hate, ice skate, train falcons, work on a cancer ward, go hot air ballooning, anything except sit in a comfy chair, stare at a fucking screen, and see the same people every day.
Brilliant.
If anyone wants a copy of that little presentation I did, just tell them to get in touch with me on LinkedIn or something, and I'll send them one with pleasure.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, excellent. And question 2 we've had is from Kirsty Lane. Kirsty says, given the ratio of work to reward isn't perhaps what it was, how can we convince young creative talent to stick around? I think she's nodding to the exodus of the industry. Or perhaps we're maybe not as attractive as we once were as an industry, maybe.
Yeah, we're not as attractive as we once were as an industry. I think that it goes back to, again, I think to, that's a bit of a curveball in a way, really. Right, okay, I think it's easy. I think we need to make it fun again. Yeah. we need to have fun. We need to. It's not just I'm not suggesting we go back to the 80s and sort of, get drunk every night and make love on the tables like people used to do in the 80s. But we ought to. It's become agencies, particularly, have become very sort of process driven, very sort of very formulaic in the way they do things. They've become a little bit of a factory in a way, really. People, if places, if anywhere really, it's not just an ad agency. If places are interesting to work, an interesting place to work, then those people will stay. And it's simple as that, really. The other thing I think, I just go back to where I was when I said about educating clients. If clients bought more great work, people would be more enthused to stay around and write more of it. Okay, it's as simple as that. It's not rocket science either, really. I think a lot of it is about how agencies and people work with clients. I think if we give them stuff just like a shop or a vending machine, then that's what they're going to that's what they're going to start expecting, and that's what they won't buy anything else. Right? So it's our responsibility to try to change that in a way. It's not. We all sort of sit there and curse clients and that sort of thing, but in fact, clients maybe secretly down their bowels curse us too, in the sense that well, if they want, what do they mean about good work? What do they mean about good creative work? What do they mean about craft and copy? Sort of thing. We don't know either. So what do they tell us? Well, we should.
I'll tell you, that's a brilliant answer, and I also think you're absolutely bang on. We need to take responsibility for fixing any ills rather than.
I think we do. I think we hang around on platforms on LinkedIn and things, and we blame people. I think, and a lot of it's down to us. Right?
Yeah, really. And to really show my hand, I've definitely been that guy. It took me a few years to realise that actually we can change things if we just.
We can change things if we want to. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So the final part of the interview, Andrew, is our 4 pertinent posers that we put to all of our guests. Starting with, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Do even more before you go in. I think I sort of beating around this like a sort of banshee in a way. But it's very, very true. I think there are more things I wish I'd done. I sort of wish sometimes I've been to university and things, but I haven't. I might do it later in life. I think I might do it when I'm 80 or something, just for fun.
I'll do it. If you do, can you let me know so I can enroll on the same course?
I think it'd be fun. Because there's also a bit of there's also the social side of university, which I never got either. So it's about meeting people and things. My sister and I were very different in that respect. My sister went to Cambridge and she did medicine, and she's now a sort of professor of dermatology. And she met a lot of our colleagues and things are all based from Cambridge and that sort of thing. So I think it's quite helpful, not just from a sort of nepotistic point of view. I think that's a wrong way of looking at it. I think it's a question of meeting similar people of my same mindset, really. I had a lot of trouble when I was younger, mixing with ordinary people who hadn't done quite as much as I had, and convincing them that was the right thing to do. And of course, everyone just wanted to sort of, do less and chill and, hang around and smoke dope or whatever they wanted to do. I wasn't into that at all. I was into doing stuff. And I was and I think probably university probably might have been good for me in retrospect.
Well, it still might be. So
yeah, I think so. Yeah.
My only concern, if you were to go to university now, and I say this with the greatest respect to university lecturers, but I feel like you might be significantly disappointed with the people that you're meant to be learning from.
Maybe.
But you might not be as well. That could be really unfair.
I think everywhere I go, I look for inspirational figures, really, and it's a bit sad, but sometimes I meet less and less these days than there is before.
Okay. Yeah. Number 2, then, if you could banish one thing from the industry, what would it be and why?
Can I say something that the industry needs rather than what was to banish from it?
Yeah, let's be more positive. Do it.
Okay. Yeah. It's again what I was saying before. Education for clients.
Okay.
Compulsory. Sort of, not just sort of why we do what we do at XXX agency. About what creativity does to minds and people's way of life and people and how it affects people. I think. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, that's excellent. Number 3, are there any books that you can recommend to our listeners? And they needn't be business books. They can be
they're
anything.
not business books. They're two. I've thought about this as well. There's 2 novelists who I think everyone should read. First of all, I think the one you know very well is Ian McEwan. Because he writes very visually, and if you want to write good copy or radio ads or anything, then you need something which is tech copy, which is going to partly take you to another place, and put you in another. Especially if you're writing radio. Radio is not literal. It should take you to another world, to onto the open road or into another town or to another planet or whatever. And just like a radio play. And you need writing that does that for you. And I think he's lovely. I love his books. I read them over and over again. Yes, it's a bit risque, some of it, and some of it, again, it's maybe the wokeists amongst us all will say it's a bit below the belt and too sexual and it's too, no, not at all. You should read it. It's very, the first few lines take you to another place. Every time you're in a field where a balloon's landing, you're in a school, you're in another country, and then you go from there and you're there already, and then it's about to tell you the rest of the story. Fantastic. If they were going to choose one of his books, which one would you recommend? Oh God, I think one of the ones I enjoyed most of all was Saturday.
Okay.
Was about a brain surgeon who almost meets his nemesis with one of his patients.
Wow.
And I think it's very, very good. So a piece of McEwan, and anyone will do really. 1 or 2 are a little bit risky. I mean, I love the things like Cement Garden, for example. It's very, very good. Again, if you're a bit squeamish about death and sort of childhood love and that sort of thing, just avoid it. But I like it because of its writing, the way it's written, and the way it takes you. Ready? And the other person who does something very similar, and an author who doesn't immediately ring a bell with a lot of people, there's an Irish guy called John McGahan, and he takes you to Dublin all the time, every time, into bars and into people's houses and people's family homes where people are having crises or love interests, or seeing people in secret trysts, and that sort of thing, and hotel rooms and that sort of thing. But it immediately takes you there. You can if it takes you into a hotel room in Dublin, for example, you can almost in the 80s. You can immediately smell the sort of the mold of the corridor, or the unkept bathroom, or the dust on the carpet. A couple of industry books. I think copybook by the NAD. I think a must. And if I can dare, can I give someone a tiny plug? I think
sure.
Steve Harrison's book, The Howard Gossage Show, which has just come out, is certainly worth a read, because Howard Gossage was really, in a way, although, a lot of new guys would shun him, I don't at all, because the very principles of his communication are laid out for all to see in everything he did. So
absolutely.
I think I would do that. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, they're brilliant. We'll link to all of those, and in fact, I'll relink in this episode's listing to the show. We called it the Howard Gossage Show, but it was actually Steve himself and Dave Dye both came on, and I think the archive they have built from, let's face it, previously lost or relatively unseen work is just incredible. And it just, the things that every bit of copy, everything that Howard Gossage wrote just enraptured you. Oh, incredible! No, I mean, and again, it's what frustrates me today when you look back at Gossage and how good he was at breaking category norms, and yet you still feel like you're having to debate that as a route.
Exactly.
Amazing. Well, these are brilliant books. And then number 4, then we always dedicate every episode to someone, and we bestow or hospital pass that honour, depending on your view, to our guest who has to give the reason why. So would you do the honour?
Yes, of course. I think I've already introduced him. I think my dad. I think you gave me the incentive to do even more in my life than I was believed to be capable of.
Amazing, fantastic. Well, this episode is very proudly dedicated to your dad. That's fantastic. Listen, Andrew, I've really enjoyed this episode. It's been a huge pleasure and a privilege. We're going to link to everything we've discussed, but how else can our listeners get more Andrew Jolliffe?
They can just get hold of me on LinkedIn. They can go to my website, which is ironic. It's not called Andrew Jolliffe, but they'll get there in the end if they do. It's called thejolliffe.com. And it's ironic. My site is designed, actually, it's a new site because it's entirely written by my clients. I didn't write a word of it, apart from the work. I just had this idea that my clients probably are more believable. What my clients say is almost more believable than what I write. So there you go. Yeah,
well,
that was the idea. Yeah.
As a proof point of that, one of them says he is crazy fun and sometimes he makes me say fuck. Very charming, but very firm. He says what he thinks is right, even if sometimes he'd better not and use more diplomacy. So, yeah, amazing. So, yeah,
exactly.
It's been, honestly, I've really enjoyed this episode.
Thank you very much. That's great. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you. And if anybody wants to get in touch, yes, do. If anyone wants a copy of the student thing I did, just tell them to get in touch. Lovely.
Yeah, well,
thank you very much.
I mean, I will link to everything we've discussed. If there's anything else you want to throw in, this won't be coming out for a few weeks, so you can just email me, Andrew, and I'll make sure if you're listening to this now on whatever podcast channel you are, then check this listing because all of those links will be there. So finally, thank you to everyone listening. If you've enjoyed the episode, please do share and review the pod. Keep your questions and guest requests coming in. To get in touch, it's easy to find Gasp online, or you can email the mouthful that is call to action at gasp.agency.
I can't get no call to action. I can't get no call to action, but I try, and I try, and I try, and I try. I can't get no call to action. Oh, I can't get no call to action. Yeah.